Let's see what this is then. Holy, it's 30 minutes. Okay, that's not at the beginning, right?
Much can be said with certainty about Arknights Endfield after its beta test.
Okay.
It's got huge potential, it's going to be very popular.
Definitely.
And this NPC is really sorry.
Really sorry, really sorry, really sorry, really sorry.
Having played the full duration of the beta,
I don't think I've encountered that guy before. That's kind of wait. Was there some guy that keeps screaming the same thing over and over again?
I can confidently say that Arknights Endfield has the potential to define a whole new generation of gacha.
It's not that it has the potential, it's already defining the whole new generation of gacha games. I think the game is complete. Like, unless this guy has like a lot of things that he's not happy with, we'll see how it is, right?
That is not an exaggeration. But I really must emphasize the word potential. Because right now, I am increasingly worried that potential may never end up being realized. That very same potential could also turn the game into the biggest disappointment I've ever experienced in all my years of playing games.
Biggest disappointment.
Firstly though,
he chose the male MC, by the way.
Really need to get the glazing out of my system, so let's just get that out of the way, shall we? There is so much that I fucking love about Endfield. Literally from the moment you open the game, it hits you with the
Arknights.
God, it's so good. Harking back to its roots, and now
I never noticed that. Even here, it shows the shadow of the male MC. I guess because if you pick one, I think the female MC is a bit different, right?
Sing itself to the world before greeting you with peak music just for the login screen.
That's loud. Okay. I mean, so what, right? Wuthering Waves has the same thing, so I don't see what is this unique to Arknights Endfield. I think a lot of games have this kind. Even Genshin has that door moving thing, right? I feel like that's what it is, right? But maybe he likes the music, so that's what it is.
The satisfaction of seeing all the sprawling factory belts come together, customizing map traversal with zip lines, the activity in the Dijang with
This guy's a dude lover. I saw he built the only male character that's from the standard rate up, and also he picked the male MC. Okay.
Operators working.
Nothing wrong with that.
You're here, Administrator.
Fan.
The view
Da
of Palace
Plan.
2 from the Nexus.
Big fan of Da Plan as well.
Phenomenal sound design.
Yeah, this boss is annoying. What is it? Is it the video quality or what?
The eerie environment and music of Valley 4.
Okay. Okay, it has good music then.
The gorgeous environment and music of Jinlong.
Yeah, this part is very pretty for sure. And I feel like they definitely need to do more. I think this area, they need to add more monsters or enemies. You don't really see them much.
And the headhunting, oh my good lord, the headhunting. The music on the banner screen gets you all excited as if you're preparing for a rocket launch. You click the button, you hear those distant scintillations, and then...
boom. Yeah, it's very good gacha animation. I think one of the better ones, right? Ooh, that's a 6 star.
By far the best summoning experience in any gacha game I've ever played. Not even close.
I actually prefer this because you're going to get characters straight up. There's no like weapon in it, right? So I'm talking about the lowest rarity, the 4 star in this case, because in this game it has 4 star, 5 star, and 6 star, right? The 4 stars even then are all characters.
Oh, right, good. Got that out of my system. I have been fortunate enough to play both the alpha and beta of Endfield.
Okay.
In its alpha state, I was hooked. I was full of optimism, and I was wholly convinced
the combat system was
my favorite game of all time.
Way worse.
So what changed in the beta? Thankfully, not the base. It's even better than before, and it has a ton of room to grow and become much deeper. Of course, even though the base has a very obvious target audience, with the nature of it being a gacha game, there will inevitably be those who are simply addicted to account progression as gameplay, and will play games they would otherwise have zero interest in just to feed that addiction. For those players, rather than simplify the gameplay, which would only annoy its fans and still wouldn't be good enough for the gacha addicts, they instead created these wacky inflatable tube guys, which you then have to murder in cold blood
Okay, it's part of the
Which
tutorial.
unlocks a bunch of tutorials for it. They are
Yep.
quite possibly the most needlessly hand-holding tutorials I've ever had to do, but I don't mind their existence at all if it means they can keep cooking and make it deeper, more complex, and even
You can skip it, just like any tutorial, you can skip that one. It's not that big of a deal. If you don't want to, you can just go and find the guys, right? But you don't have to like do that thing. I guess you sort of had to do the special achievements to get like extra Originites or something.
more fun and satisfying in the future. And for those who are hoping for just another account progression dopamine machine,
Okay.
who lament the mere thought of meaningfully engaging with the base at all, fear not, there is actually an easy solution. Don't play it.
What do you mean?
Unfortunately though, in spite of everything I've mentioned so far, Endfield has made what I feel are very significant mistakes.
So what's the mistake then?
Pretty much all of them are fixable, these are far from permanent, but in
Okay.
general, beta tests tend to look pretty similar to their full release versions. So let's dive in. The main story is, to put it bluntly, bad. There's no nuance at all. Landbreakers are completely one-dimensional and uninteresting, just generic bad guys who want you dead. Compare them to Reunion from the Arknights main story. They're introduced to us as fighting for the same goal as Rhodes Island, that being to liberate the infected, but with very different methods. There is a clear conflict.
I feel like the story is okay. It actually improved actually. If you play the first alpha and then you play the recent beta, it definitely improved. They even changed the entirety of the story, right? But it's hard for you to just gauge and look at that up until that point.
Understand the motivations of the antagonists and how they ended up where they are.
Because you don't see the whole
Landbreakers
thing
have
yet.
none of this. We also know almost nothing about the aims or motivations of the main villain Neferith, who
Yeah.
might just be one of the most toothless villains I have ever seen.
Because you only encounter her once or twice, right?
The sole exception of one line when you first meet her, she shows up from time to time, says some vague bullshit and fucks off again. How on earth can this be written by Hypergriff, the same people who gave us Patriot and Tallulah? They can
Because you are someone that lost your memory, right? It's just like any other thing. You're someone that lost your memory. Apparently everybody knows you. And everybody knows you, the administrator, but you don't really know them. So that connection is not there yet. So it's going to be built throughout in the encounter as you progress in the story. I think that's going to be the intention of how it is, right? So it's very generic trope, right? Basically, you lost your memory. You were there before that, similar to Wuthering Waves, I guess, in a way, right? And then you have to like try to figure things out as things goes. Polika apparently remembers you previously, but you probably can't. Like, that's how the story is being told, right?
very reasonably fix all of these issues before the game's release, but the alpha's story wasn't good either, so I'm not convinced they will. I have no issue with the notion of a simple story well told, but that does not describe Enfield's story at all. And it's not just the writers who are at fault. At one point, Chen refers to Neferith as Nephi, which I found extremely weird. Why is she giving the main villain a friendly nickname? Turns out, this is because in every single language except English, Chen says essentially the equivalent of Nefer something or Nefer whatever, because the name went over her head. It's a subtle way of adding to her characterization. Instead, the English translators collectively hotboxed their entire office and decided Chen is actually giving her the kind of cute nickname you'd normally give to close friends.
I feel like it's not the best thing ever, but I think it's kind of nitpicky, right? Like, it's just a small thing. Like, does it ruin your immersion? I feel like for me, at least it doesn't, right? Again, yeah, it depends on individual. I don't think that if you address a villain as someone more friendly, like, yeah, is it that big of a deal? I don't know.
I am astounded at how incompetent this is, but then again, these are the same translators who translated cold to cryo, for no reason in particular, I'm sure.
Okay.
Most of the dialogue is also
So basically it's
exasperating.
translation for now.
You should feel lucky, because I am the only one who can take care of technical
That's her personality,
problems
right?
like
She's
this.
someone that's like cocky.
Say no more. Stop moving already, and do something about that ether side rupture before it gets any worse.
Guys, writers, please! Is it too much to ask not to be treated like an idiot? Who could your target audience possibly be for this dialogue such that you feel the need to explicitly state the obvious multiple times and make sure everything is repeated very slowly for clarity? Oh, motherfucker! Consistent with the emerging trend of disappointing writing, frustratingly are the characters. Not because their writing is bad per se, but because there's just so much wasted potential.
Like
For
what?
example, Ember is a Sancta and Shaihi is a Sarkaz. We know from the Arknights story that the Sancta and the Sarkaz are seemingly always in conflict with each other due to what the Sarkaz see as the Sancta's betrayal. An image of a Sarkaz and a Sancta holding hands was very prominent in Arknights' fourth concept trailer as a holy shit moment because its meaning was so significant. Meanwhile, the only mention of something even slightly resembling a connection to this lore is one line in Ember's file saying, "The children born and raised in Talos 2 would never learn that angels and..."
Okay, I can see the problem here. He has the expectation because he played the first Arknights So there's maybe like there's like an conflict issue between these two races. So going into Arknights Endfield, he assumed the same thing. But I feel like for me, I never have that expectation. I never, because this is like I assume it's a new franchise, right? So I'm just going into this assuming it's going to be a different world, but it's just using the same name of the game. But I guess this person is looking at it rather as a sequel, rather than something that's like a separate thing.
Sanctum used to carry
So
beautiful
I can
meanings
see
in times past.
you are going
If
to
I'm
have the
interpreting this
expectation in
correctly,
that case.
this is the writer's way of saying that the entire history of Terra, all the extraordinary, catastrophic, mountain-moving events that directly led to Terran races ending up on Talos 2,
Okay.
not important. None of it matters anymore. I am so disappointed in the writers. What a monumental waste of such an...
So he expects some connection between these two games. Like, is it unfair to expect that connection or but between the same franchise? Maybe there should be some, but I feel like it's okay to not have. I don't know. Maybe the name Arknights, and maybe it's because of the same name, right? One is called Arknights, one is called Arknights Endfield, so people expect that kind of connection. I guess it's more. I guess you could also look at it as Honkai Impacted and Honkai Star Rail. There's not really any connection other than just some of it. They use the same characters pretty much, right? Huh.
An incredible wealth of lore at your disposal. All that being said, though, I must admit, I do love the fact the resident Australian, Aviwena, says verbatim,
Okay,
"Bird of me's
Aviwena.
piss. How does it taste like? Crikey fucking bloody oath, Sheila, you piss-drinking cunt." Despite nearly all the writing being a
Why is
massive
he pushing
letdown,
the-
I want to make it explicitly
Okay.
clear the voice actors, thankfully, are actually good at their job and have done marvelous work
Yeah, I
with the
feel like they're
material
pretty
they've
good
been given.
actually.
I'm a huge fan of Aviwena, Dapan, and Wolfguard's regional accents.
Oh, of course. You're the boss.
Big
You
fan of
find a way.
Dapan, man. Big fan of Dapan.
Not a problem. Leave it to me.
And on top of that,
It does annoy me that the OG lore is basically meaningless. You have like 50 novels worth of story in the first game and it's tossed out the window. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I can understand from that perspective, but for me, because I never really I did play the first Arknights, but I wasn't someone that's like deep into the first Arknight story. So I just play this game as an individual game as a whole, right? And I do think that I actually think it's better that way. I actually think that way, right? So you might be offended, but hear me out, right? You don't want your game, you don't want a sequel of a game to require you to play the first game. I think if you design it that way, it's going to push away some audience. Yes, you might push away some audience either way because some audience want the connection. But I actually think it's a bad way to design a new sequel of a game, to have it so that you don't understand anything in the game before you play the older game. Does it make sense? I feel like if you have Fortnite 2, you shouldn't have to be able to play Fortnite 1 to understand what's happening in Fortnite 2. If you have Genshin 2, I feel like to have Genshin 2 good, you shouldn't have to play the first one to be able to play the second one. I actually think going that way is better, so you are able to attract new players, new audiences. That's just my personal opinion though, of how these products. For example, I think one that you can think of very that you guys may feel relatable is maybe the Marvel movies, right? Some of the Marvel movies, I go to the cinema, the recent ones, right? The old ones, I get it, right? That's fine. But the new ones, like some of it, you have to watch the series to get the full context. For example, the Doctor Strange one, my friend watched the Wanda and Vision series, and he can understand certain extra things that I don't understand when I watch that movie. So ideally, you want everything to be standalone, preferably, because nobody is going to watch the 10 whole movies before they watch the recent one to understand the whole thing. So I do lean towards the side that it's better for majority of the players to be a completely new thing that doesn't relate to the old one, or doesn't require you to understand read through or play the old one to be able to understand or enjoy the new one. I think that's better.
the animations are way more expressive, the models are outstanding, and their idle chatter adds a ton of
Idealism is always detached from reality, and it's the first step towards disappointment.
Okay.
Thank you, Wolfguard. Also,
Wolfguard.
just one more thing. I am no prude.
Uh-oh.
I am a straight man
Zenless
who
Zone
plays
Zero.
gacha games. I'm not going to pretend not to like fan service.
Okay.
But guys, holy fuck, relax. Subtlety is dead. Humanity is cooked.
No, this is probably Arknights
Mercy on my
Enfield's.
soul, guide me from the...
This is Arknights Enfield's best feature. The animation is really, really good. Even a lot of Japanese developers are literally praising it for that, which is very, very good, right? They do have this animation going into it, but most of it is just pointing towards Yvonne, which is kind of bad. You want I would say try to equalize it, right? So try to give the other characters more animation as well. But everybody seems to like Yvonne, which is I think Yvonne is going to be the most famous character for sure, right?
Wayward woman, Lord Jesus. Now, as I said before, everything I have mentioned so far is fixable. Bad writers can be replaced and characters can be given good writing later on, which is why all of this is negligible
Yvonne is
compared to the
S-tier,
number
yeah.
one issue I have with Arknights Endfield in its beta state, because it is not fixable once it is released. In order to get there,
Okay.
we first need to talk about combat.
I know. I think he's going to
Combat
complain
in
he doesn't
Endfield,
like
for the
it.
most part, revolves around skills and skill points.
I kinda
Use a
like the
shared
combat,
SP rock
actually. It's
to trigger
quite
a battle
different.
skill, which in theory triggers a combo
So it's
skill,
like 4
which triggers
characters in the
even
field
more
at the
of
same
them,
time.
and
You
so
swap
on.
between them, right?
Combo skills are essentially just QTEs with extra steps that deal damage. You press E when the prompt shows up and it gets the neurons going. Basic attack strings essentially serve as the cost of getting a final strike, which is the last hit in the sequence. Final strikes restore SP, so for the most part, you
Okay.
really want to be getting the full sequence of basic attacks to that end. That logic generally applies to the combat as a whole. Given the importance of skills, you want to be maximizing SP restoration, hence the prevalence of Arklight in nearly every team composition. Her individual damage
never
may not
actually
be
used
anything
Arklight,
noteworthy, but her ability
but I
to
know she's
generate
quite
SP
strong.
is excellent, and more SP means more damage. I'm honestly kind of surprised she isn't a 6-star. Now, the
Yeah,
beta
Arklight is a
also
4-star,
adds
man.
the ability to dodge. Due to the nature of final strikes being your primary way of restoring SP, you need to commit to the full sequence of basic attacks to get it, which means currently
Now, one thing that I think they could improve upon is the dodge. I think the dodge in this game is extremely unsatisfying compared to something like Wuthering Waves, man. I think Wuthering Waves has a better... I think Wuthering Waves is one of the best... Wuthering Wave and Zenithal Zero, right? At least when you dodge, the time slows down and you know you dodge. But over here, there's no such thing. So you don't even know sometimes you dodge, or if you get hit along the way, you gotta look at your HP and check, hey, did I got hit or not, right? So I think that's something that they can improve upon, maybe, right?
Currently, there is still very much a choice every time an enemy attacks you of either dodging or taking the hit, and the dodge is often not the best move. But it still gives me cause for concern. Future 6-stars are inevitably going to be designed to take advantage of more and more gameplay mechanics. Right now, the dodge only exists as a means of survival rather than facilitating damage.
I mean, you
If
can
a
run
dodge
around as well.
exists in any capacity, there is a very real danger of them leaning much further into it by, say, having a 6-star with a combo skill triggered by a dodge, and then more units with kits centered around dodging who synergize with that 6-star, and a new 6-star whose basic attacks don't get interrupted by the dodge, and before long you'll end up with a player base wanting more and more action, understandably seeking to flex their ADHD action gamer reflexes as their expression of skill. But with Enfield's base building being the way it is,
I feel like
and with
Enfield
the
is
fact
not
that they didn't
about the
dumb
combat.
down the actual substance of the base
At least that's
building
how
at
I
all
feel,
since the
right?
alpha, the vision the Enfield team had was clearly aimed at the kind of player who likes to obsess over details, who may not necessarily want something based on reflexes, but instead something more strategic, controlled and precise. The base obviously
Gilberta
appeals
can
to
do
this
that?
kind of player, while the combat has ended up with a sort of identity crisis.
Never actually
Unsure
used
of what
her.
it really wants to look like,
Even
trying
though
to be
she's
a bit of
free.
everything while never actually excelling at any of them. Most of the strategy comes from the team comps rather than the execution. The actual process of triggering combos and doing damage and so on, while satisfying for a while, is
Okay.
very easy. Use a battle skill or two, do your basic attack string, face tank smaller hits, use combo skills on cooldown, and repeat. I quickly exhausted every single possibility for improvement, and even self-limiting clears like duos and solos are not at all challenging. I died more often to platforming than to enemies. This is mostly due to
Okay.
the current cast of enemies lacking any real variety or complexity. Sure, it will improve with time, but the state of the game at launch has real implications for the future of the game. Hypergriff has been through these
I thought the final boss mechanics is pretty good. The one that he fought earlier, the one that has he didn't really show it, right? But the one that he showed earlier, that final boss, there's a few different bosses in the game that have quite a unique mechanic.
motions before.
There's
Today,
one big
more than
guy
5
as well,
years after its launch, Arknights
halfway.
is known for its meaningfully challenging endgame modes to the point
Yep.
of Chinese universities hosting nationwide Arknights tournaments with thousands of dollars in prize money. I've kept playing for all these years because Arknights has such a rich endgame and high skill ceiling.
I mean, sometimes in the beta, you can't really see this yet, right? Like, I'm not trying to... Like, to be fair, if you look at Honkai Star Rail beta back then, you look at Zenless Zone Zero beta back then, before they came out, was there any endgame? Most of the time, the endgame are quite hidden. They don't really have endgame yet. It's just, they allow you to play the game in the beta, so you shouldn't expect like endgame content in beta for the time being, right? I think most games, as far as I know that I've played beta before, they don't usually have the final endgame stages there yet, right? They usually come out in the official release of the game.
But for a long time, it didn't. When it first launched, the most interesting gameplay it had to offer was Chapter 4. It took them years to make integrated strategies a permanent game mode. But the difference is, Arknights didn't offer anything else in terms of gameplay. There was nothing else to play the game for. With Endfield, Hyperdrift seems to have regressed into doing the same thing by making it frustratingly shallow in its launch state. But doing so this time is a critical mistake. Those who are looking for strategic depth will not find it. It is pathetically easy, and it will remain that way for at least the first 6 months or so. Which means once those players have completed their bases, which really doesn't take that much time, they may not stick around for that long. But those who are looking for action will get plenty of it from daily and weekly gameplay, regardless of the difficulty. The ability to dodge not only gives those action-seeking players their daily dose of dopamine, but also significantly diminishes the need for healing. If their overworld healing needs can be met with items you can craft directly from the backpack, and a 4-star like Snowshine can provide literally all my healing needs with room to spare.
Yeah, Snowshine is a very good healer.
What reason does the action-seeking player have to engage with the base at all? The outposts are optional. All they need at that point is some components to make gear.
You still gotta get gears, right?
This, combined with the lack of strategic depth in its launch state, creates a serious risk of cultivating a majority of players who are exclusively invested in the action gameplay. Now, this will be a controversial take, but I would not be making this video were I not willing to defend it. I think the best decision Endfield could possibly make after the beta is to remove the dodge entirely. Hyperdrift's development decision...
That's what they did in the alpha. In the alpha, you cannot dodge at all. And then in the beta, they added dodge. The only way to dodge in the alpha is to not dodge, but to swap to a different character when the enemy is going to hit you. So that way the NPC takes damage, and they know how to avoid it sometimes, right? But your character cannot dodge. I remember that was the thing. But I think if you want to... They already add back the dodge. I doubt they're going to remove it, right? It's not going to be an option.
Will be driven by what players want, and if the vast majority of players aren't engaging with the base, the game's evolution will reflect that. This is my #1 issue with the game. They are creating a precarious combination of action gameplay in the combat alongside the slower gameplay of the base. We already have an example of such a precarious combination in a gacha game failing to hold in Zenless.
The base doesn't need improvements. I feel like the base building can be fun, right? I can see like it can attract some people who like... there's a lot of... Actually, when I was playing Arknights Endfield, I actually didn't know this, but a lot of people come to me and told me about Satisfactory and Factorio. Now, there's a big audience for those games out there. You can't deny that a lot of people like Factorio and Satisfactory. Now, it might not be a game for everyone, but if you look up gameplays of those games, people that like those kind of games are not going to be, I want combat in this game. So, it's really complicated, right? So are you trying to capture the audience that loves combat, or are you trying to capture the audience for people who like base building and capitalize on that, right? And I think that's what they're trying to lean towards too, not necessarily the combat aspect of it, right? The combat aspect, we already got Wuthering Waves, right? Let's be honest, right? So do you think Arknights Endfield should compete with Wuthering Waves for combat? I don't think so. So what is the purpose of them? I think they're trying to tap into the different market. That's the whole point of it. That's literally the whole point of it.
Zone Zero's TV mode. It is.
I remember. Okay, so Zenless Zone Zero TV mode again. I'm quite surprised they decided to remove this as well. Like literally the entire version 1.0. It was just the entire thing. Like, what surprises me is like they went with it. This game has beta. They went with it. So wouldn't they have gotten feedback by then about the TV mode as a whole? So they still went with it in version 1.0. People didn't like it. I guess a lot of people complain about it, and then they remove it, right? But wouldn't you have enough feedback to know that in the beta itself? Or is it too late for you to... Or is it they try to still release it in the official release to get a bigger sample size of more players to know what people like or not, I guess. Because I don't see why they didn't fix it to begin with, because they have multiple betas for this game actually, right?
Action game. It was advertised as an action
game. You enjoyed the TV though?
Lo and behold, the action game
but there are people that didn't like it as well.
And Hoyoverse decided to all but kill the TV mode entirely.
Yeah.
The difference though is that Zenless Zone Zero was built from the ground up around its dodge and parry mechanics.
But Zenless Zone Zero have good combat. That's the thing. So you can take out the you can take out the TV in Zenless Zone Zero because it has good combat. But in Arknights, you shouldn't take out the base building because the combat in Arknights is not about the combat, you know? So it's a bit different.
mechanics. It is fundamentally an action game. That is where its strengths lie, and that decision was an act of leaning further into those strengths. Endfield, on the other hand, has been built from the ground up around the base, yet it is taking clear steps towards action gameplay. Obviously, they aren't going to kill off the base entirely, you might as well announce end of service at that point, but I am convinced Endfield is sleepwalking into doing something not all that far removed. If the game cultivates a player base who are seeking action, then as more and more regions are introduced, each one asking the player to build a new base from scratch, those action-seeking players will complain and...
Because the thing is, we won't really know how it's like in the future, right? Like this base building thing,
one asking the player to build a new base.
They could be like version 1.1, version 1.2 could be like an improvement to it, or there could be like more stuff that revolve around this, right? And some people might actually like it, and depending on, we also don't really see, one thing that we also don't really see in betas is events. How events are being held, what kind of events that the game can have. Not necessarily the game will always have a combat related event, right? I mean, you guys play Zenless Zone Zero, you know Zenless Zone Zero right now has a fishing event, like fishing, Wuthering Wave has fishing event. So the events will always be what is going to be the main focus for players to basically engage with the stuff that the game can do. So if the event can incorporate something to do with this base building thing, I can see some fun in it, right? Depending on how you do the proper stuff.
Base from scratch, those action-seeking players will complain, and being the majority of the player base, there is a serious danger of Hypergriff pivoting to action gameplay for that reason.
Okay.
And we have already seen that Hypergriff is perfectly willing to let you sidestep most of the strategy in their strategy game, so long as you pay up.
Wow.
But for the same reason Hoyoverse's attempts at strategy have been absolute dog shit, Hypergriff would not even hold a candle to develop.
I actually like that tower defense in Genshin, right? Last time. I actually like that one.
Dodge and doubling down on strategic gameplay solves this problem and gives them the space to build on Enfield's strengths and create something truly phenomenal. It is by far the best decision they can make for the longevity of the game. Instead, they are trying to steer it in two different directions simultaneously. One towards that vision they so clearly had a year ago, and one towards appealing to a wider, more general audience.
Yeah, so I understand what he's trying to say.
We all know what general audience really means. Let's not pretend otherwise. It means the Hoyoverse audience.
Hoyoverse audience. Wow.
Obviously, there's nothing wrong with playing Hoyoverse games. This does not mean every single Hoyoverse fan ever. The problem is with those who do not see each game as having a unique identity appealing to different kinds of players, but rather they see 3D anime RPG gacha game as a genre in itself. And yes, that does include you, Wuthering Waves fans. Hoyoverse and Kuro games both have their roots in action gameplay, while Hypergriff's roots are in strategy. And yet there are still those who make the argument that trying to be like Genshin or like Wuthering Waves or whatever is a good thing because they're the most popular gacha, and for some reason, popularity is the only thing that matters to these people. I'm going to make what may seem like a strange analogy at first, but just trust me on this. When Gangnam Style released in 2012, it was a global phenomenon. It became the first video to reach 1 billion views on YouTube, and just like that, the Korean pop industry was catapulted into the mainstream. More than a decade after that phenomenon, do we now have a thriving industry consisting solely of songs that are like Gangnam Style?
Is he talking about K-pop?
Sounds a bit silly, doesn't it? Psy did not stumble upon some magic formula for success which can be repeated forever with the right balance of ingredients, and Psy has explicitly said this himself.
You know, I cannot call this success because this is called phenomena, and which means I don't do anything. People do it, right? So this was by people, not by me.
K-pop is the Leviathan of
I didn't know this guy can speak English,
not
man.
because everybody copied Gangnam Style.
This is the first time I've heard him
took advantage of the opportunities
other than from the Gangnam Style video.
Fast forward to 2020 and Genshin Impact becomes a global phenomenon, catapulting gacha games into the mainstream. MiHoYo put some forward-thinking people at the wheel, quickly built a brand identity, renaming themselves Hoyoverse, and now, 5 years later, Hoyoverse has found unfathomable sustained success.
Best mobile game.
But again, this is not because they found some magic formula, but because they took advantage of the opportunities brought about by the phenomenon that was and is Genshin Impact.
What is this?
This is what people so often miss when they insist that every new gacha game needs to be like some other gacha game.
So they should be like Genshin?
Of course, this is no concern for enlightened and experienced 3D anime RPG gacha game enthusiasts like ourselves. I'm sure our judicious and learned beta testers have provided invaluable feedback to the developers. Shall we peruse a few of them? Dash feels underwhelming. It should be more forgiving and have more iframes.
Dash
it's not
feels
to my liking
underwhelming.
because of my action RPG experiences. You don't say! Game needs a proper dodge, and anyone who says otherwise is coping. A quick look around the gacha space makes this abundantly clear. Not being able to dodge cancel makes the overall combat loop feel unsatisfying because you're forced to take hits that could have been avoided. Yeah, dodging definitely needs rework, like larger iframes for casuals and consecutive dodges, and dodges not breaking your basic attack combo, and more dodging.
I agree with that actually. Casual players need to be taken into account, right? So maybe like a little bit of a better, longer iframe wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? I don't see how that's a bad thing.
Distance and making dodges more rewarding, and make SP boss 4 instead of 3. It would make combat faster.
Is this
Please
from
make
one
normal
guy?
attacks more powerful, and also make each hit give SP, and also stagger, and also please give SP whenever I dodge. Also please make dodges use less stamina.
What?
Also,
So far, so good, but it feels like some essential features are missing, like iframe rolls and parrying and deflecting.
hey, remember what I said about players wanting more and more action if a dodge exists? Make SP boss 4 instead of 3, and make it recharge faster. Right now, there's no incentive to swap to another character during combat. It cancels the animation and doesn't change the position. I hope they make it more like Wuthering Waves. Oh, here we go, boys, buckle up! Combat's already way better than with the technical test. Being too different will scare new players away. They changed it from the technical test for a reason. But this is my view as someone who's played lots of recent gacha games like Genshin Impact, Zenless Zone Zero, and Wuthering Waves, but never the original Arknights. By the way, there is Girls Frontline 2 for a more top-down strategic approach, which is exactly why I'm not playing it. Here are some exploration options in the competitors I've played. Genshin Impact, the game should tell me which weapon to put on my character, like in Zenless Zone Zero. Also, the game should tell me which gear to put on my character, like in Zenless Zone Zero. Overworld exploration feels kind of slow. A good example of how to make it better would be Wuthering Waves. Right now, this feels like a certain game where the combat is you running around and
I mean, of course, a lot of people that look at Arknights Endfield are going to be players that I've played Genshin and Wuthering Waves before, right? Let's just not confuse things, right? I mean, this is going to happen, right? Because they play open world games and they want to try Arknights Endfield, expecting or thinking this is going to feel similar. But I feel like you also got to take into account the Arknights players as well, right? What they feel about it as well, because at the end of the day, probably they are the one that is going to be the target audience as well. But yeah, it's going to be quite a massive game, and they have to figure out what are the right feedback and what is the wrong feedback. I think Dawei himself said it, right? There are a lot of people that always give random feedback, but they're not necessarily the fans of the game. That's just how it is.
combining different skills to get the reaction. Damn, that's crazy. I wonder why. Jump feels too short and floaty. It would be great to increase the height or allow a double jump. They would have to redo all the geometry. What do you mean? This is especially important because of improvements to exploration.
Jump feels underwhelming. It would be great to increase its height or double jump. No, I don't think it needs double jump. Jump is I don't think you need. Yeah, I don't think you need double jump, right? It's not going to. The whole mechanic of the jump is so that you can move things around in the game, and then you can use certain things as a platform. I think in the future they might introduce certain things that you can even craft to be able to jump on top, to be able to perform almost like a equivalence of a double jump, but not quite, right? But you take advantage of the base building stuff.
Competition has been making... Oh, will you please fuck off? It would be great if they considered adding platforming abilities like a double jump and wall climbing and swimming and the grappling hook. It's one of the fun aspects of open world games. It's not an open world game, for crying out loud! All the big open world gacha games let you carry over the pity. So
if you don't... Okay, I like this one, the conversation about PT. Alright, PT is very important. If you don't have 120 pulls to spend, it feels terrible to lose 50-50. This system for characters sucks unless you can carry the PT over to another banner. All of the big open world gacha lets you carry over the PT. This system is not going to bode well for most of the mainstream gacha community. Sorry, but you cannot change my mind on this. Yeah, this system might suck, but if you think about it, it's actually cheaper because you don't have to go through the entire 70 or 80 again. So it's actually a little bit cheaper. But whether or not it's going to bode well with the mainstream gacha community, it depends. But if you want it to copy Genshin or Wuthering Wave and have the same system, that's up to them if they want to do it or not, right? But there's nothing wrong with trying to be a little bit different though. I feel like with how the games is as well, I do agree also like that the game actually is not very dupe heavy, so it doesn't feel that bad.
This system will not bode well for most of the mainstream gacha community.
Well, they can bloody well fuck off then!
People need to learn how to skip banners.
This is stupid advice. Just look at this example from
You just wanted to be more like Hoyoverse.
And they're the most popular gacha, period.
Yeah.
Not carrying over the guarantee in a
So
game
he wants it to be like
I only build up
Hoyoverse.
pity if there is a character I really want dupes for. The concept of dupes is already questionable.
Looking at Genshin I know very few people that play Arknights, but dozens that play Hoyo and Kuro games.
This is a
Okay.
lie. You know people who play one Kuro game. It is Wuthering Waves specifically. Don't fucking lie to me!
It's about what your competition does in business.
Oh my god, you people are insufferable.
I keep pulling after I get the character to build pity, but that's now a mistake in this
You
game.
have a gambling addiction! Building pity is not a thing!
In my ideal
Yeah,
gacha
building
system,
pity.
there is no 50-50 system at all. Just a banner with X pulls to get it guaranteed. And
Actually, to be fair, Arknights Endfield, building pity might actually be a thing, alright? Because there's 6 stars and there's also 5 stars actually. Right? It's a bit different than Genshin. Genshin only has 4 stars and 5 stars. Wuthering Waves only has 4 stars and 5 stars. Arknights Endfield has 4 stars, 5 stars, and 6 stars. So I think the system is going to be more in line of you might not want to care about the 6 star as much. Maybe you want to target the 5 star. And even the 5 star has 50-50 itself. So that's going to be something like, because the first 5 star that we have in Wuthering Wave was Avivina, right? Avivina was the 5 star. 6 star was the, what's the girl with the red hair again? The one that used the sword. And then Yvonne is in the second banner. But that could be taken in the equation as well because you have 3 rarity.
the higher chance to get
it's a
it
bit
with X
different.
pulls.
This is literally the Endfield system, you idiot!
Mark my words, if this system
Yeah,
goes
Leviathan,
live with
that's
no
the name.
changes, the player base from competitors of this game will absolutely not play long term. Bear in mind, by the way, this is just from the Discord server. There
Yep.
will be far more of this in the private feedback
Gambling
surveys.
problems.
I want to highlight one more post, however, in which 2 testers state similar concerns to mine and are met with a rather depressing response.
Okay.
The first tester says, "Currently there are a lot of action elements, but the battles don't feel exciting. I think the battle system in the technical test might be more enjoyable. When it comes to action, other companies' games are more refined, and the current system just feels like an inferior version of them, which is just annoying." The second agrees.
I do agree that the battle system in Arknights Endfield is inferior to Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero and maybe Genshin, right? But at the end of the day, I don't know, man. Like, you either make a similar game, like you can't make a better Wuthering Waves. I don't think you can. Wuthering Waves combat is really good. You either make a similar game with Wuthering Waves that's combat focused, then you have a clone of Wuthering Waves, or you just go with this direction and the combat is there, but you focus on something else like the base building, right? And I thought that was the direction that they're going with, right? It's hard to say again. It's hard to say for sure what is the developer's vision, because I'm not the developer, right? I'm just a player. But for me, when I play it, personally, I don't mind, because if I care about combat, I would play Wuthering Waves, right? Like that's how I think. If I care about more action style, I would go to Zenless Zone Zero. But again, I'm an abnormal guy. I'm not a normal guy. I play 11 gacha games, right? How can I be normal? But most people probably only want to play 1 or 2 gacha. So I get from their frustration, from their perspective, they want this Arknights Endfield to be like a 3-in-1 or a 4-in-1 maybe, right? I'm not sure. So that's just where the criticism is coming from.
There are some opinions that it's plain compared to other games, but Enfield is differentiated from others and is interesting in its own way, so I don't want it to be swayed by those opinions and make it feel too action-oriented. If the dodge window is too lenient, it'll just become a dodging action game. While the third tester, eloquently summing up the vast majority of the feedback, says, "I agree with increasing the action element. The reason is simple: it will attract a wider range of players." This, essentially, is the mindset of people who keep asking for the game to be something it's not. They have no concept of carving out a niche in the market, or games having unique identities, or the developers having their own vision. It's all just monthly revenue PvP. It is boring, it is exhausting, and I lament the apparent reality that Hypergriff seems to be listening to them.
Yeah, this is the recent one. No, Hypergriff should definitely take feedback from the players, because these are players who are interested in it. These are the potential customers, right? Definitely taking feedback is going to be how it is. But at the same time, they shouldn't deviate, or they should always have their own vision that they want to point towards. They shouldn't like deviate from that, right? Improvements to combat controls, camera representation, dodge experience, and the visual effects on movesets of characters and enemies are already in the works. I think these are all good things.
As it stands, the base is the one and only thing meaningfully differentiating Endfield from other gacha games.
Yep.
Thankfully, the majority of people anticipating the game's release do seem to understand how important the base is for that reason. But while it does have tons of room to grow and become even better, I
didn't know you can connect this from the top-down viewpoint, right? I'm always doing it from the 3D viewpoint. Maybe this is much more easier. You get less mistakes.
It will not. The most optimistic outcome I can believe in is that new regions will have a new gimmick, like Jinlong's fluids and pipes.
Okay.
Build a new base with it over the course of maybe a few days at most. The vast majority of players will be satisfied, and that's where it will end. Gacha games are not conventional games. Fundamentally, the characters are the product, and the game is simply a vessel through which the product is marketed. But reducing all gacha games to this fundamental is boring. They're fun! There's so much potential in the live service model for outstanding single-player games to see years of consistent updates and improvements, to foster thriving communities that conventional games often don't have the lifespan for. Instead, a subset of the communities that already exist are preventing that potential from being realized by consistently pushing new endeavors with unique visions into the same box until they all become homogenized imitations of the same thing. Hypergriff needs to decide if they are content with being that imitation, because a game for everyone is a game for no one.
Yeah, they need to figure out their target audience.
There was a moment while playing through the main story which I think will stick with me for many years. I was thinking about some moments from the alpha, like Fial's desperate attempts to jump onto this ledge because I was standing on it and...
Oh, this was in the first one. I wonder what happened to this guy. You never see him anymore in the in the first alpha he was there. The second beta he wasn't there.
Admiring certain details on the blighted gigaspawns. My boy was caked up. Holy...
Damn.
I happened to be in the Origin Loadspring region at the time, and I noticed why the music for this place in particular felt so eerie. Remember the menu theme I was glazing earlier?
Yeah.
Now compare that
what
motif
game is for
to the
everyone?
music from this
What
part of the
game?
map.
Is it eerie? I don't think it's eerie. Huh.
It invokes a feeling of loss, a feeling of knowing something will never be the same again. And suddenly, I had to stop what I was doing because I was hit with an overwhelming feeling of nostalgia for the alpha.
Alpha? Yeah, this is the alpha,
Are you
right?
having fun, Topo?
It's really satisfying, actually. I'm a big fan of it. There's so much potential in what this combat can be. Do you have any other comments on the overall storyline? Okay. I can write an essay for this. I want the story to have a spine and let writers take risks.
What, this is his alpha commentary or something?
If it's dumbed down and basic. Wait, no. Angelina!
Angie, that's not how you abuse
Yeah, you have a bug like that sometimes when you're on the ledge.
No!
They will just fall down.
I really hope they commit to what they've got here. I think it's sick. Commit to the vision, commit to no dodge and shit. Obviously, like, it needs refining and stuff, but...
You do understand not many people will agree with you.
Yeah, I know. As long as they're actually playing the alpha and understand what the vision is and what it's asking of them, it's totally fine. If they disagree, like, all I can reasonably ask of someone is to think for themselves, right?
The game do have good graphics though. Insane graphics.
I can't fucking wait for this game's full release, man. This is a technical alpha. It's like a really bare bones version of this game, and it's already like, I've just been unable to put it down. Just actually insane.
Wait, you think the alpha is better? The story in alpha is worse, definitely, for sure. If you ask me.
It feels a little weird to talk about it this way because it was literally only a year ago. But I'm making this video in the first place because I need to express how it made me feel. I had so much optimism for what the game could be. But now that optimism is becoming silent lamentation. If Endfield continues on the path it's currently on, every gacha developer with an eye on this game will see the trend. Originality is overrated and the path to success lies in imitation. The men in suits will take notice and unique, interesting ideas with oceans of potential will not even see the light of sunrise.
Yup.
Endfield is a dying canary in a coal mine. That canary may not be dead yet, but I am not at all convinced Hypergriff is interested in saving it. What could have been the harbinger of a golden age could instead doom itself to be the death knell of gacha games.
Death knell of gacha games. Wow.
I have given every possible piece of feedback I can give to the developers. And so I have done all that I can to convince
From
them to
lover
remain
to
faithful
hater?
to the vision they clearly had.
I played through the end as
For
well.
now,
I got that as well.
I can only hope the decisions which need to be made will be made by those who are just as enchanted with that vision as I am. And I won't be left wondering what could have been.
End of an era. I see. So that's it? Ooh. There's some good editing right there, right? For sure. He must have took a long time to finish making this video. But it's easy for us to say the games should stick to their core vision or whatever, right? And I get it, but at the same time, you gotta look from their perspective as the developers or, you know, Hypergriff themselves. This is like a big game, massive game. They probably spend millions in this game, so they probably want some return of investment as well. So you can't blame them for trying to be a little bit more safe and trying to, you know, you don't want the game to be out like that and just be flop, right? That's just how it is. But it's a very good video for sure.
The apparent reality.
Let me link it to you guys, right? I didn't know of this guy's channel. So this is a very, very good stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's up to them, right? They want to take risk or not. That's just how it is. But we'll see. We'll be able to see if the game is going to be the same or not. I'll definitely still look out for Arknights Endfield. The guy's name is called. The channel is called Toboruo. Alright, subscribe to this. I don't think I'm in my right one.